So there's one really tricky issue about pagination that not that many engineers know about until they run into it in production. And this is a very big performance degradation. So let's say we have this page, right? And I took it from HubSpot's website. And in this case, it's a simple example with only 2 pages. But let's imagine we have thousands of pages, right? Our e-commerce website is huge. And we start pagination with a limit and offset technique, right? And this is usually what you learn on YouTube and everywhere else. So we're going to start with an offset 0, then page 2 is going to be offset 10, page 6 is going to be offset 60 now, and let's say page 10,000 is going to be this offset. But the problem with this offset is the fact that the database engine still has to scan all of these elements just to then take this small limit, right? So we're going to be scanning pretty much the whole database to then take the remainder here. Now, I'm going to demonstrate that this actually leads to a huge performance degradation. So I have this simple database, or table rather, with a post, and I have an ID, title, and created at. And I have an index on post at, created at, and ID, right? So every time I run this benchmark, what's going to happen is, well, I have 1 million entries here. What's going to happen is, you see the offset technique is taking much longer every time we increase the number, or rather the depth. So by the time it reaches almost 1 million entries, it's going to take 20 milliseconds. And there's a different technique called the keyset. And keyset, or you can also call it a cursor, is a different technique which is much faster. Now, I'm going to tell you when to use it and how to use it. But first, let's take a look at this limit and offset one. So the limit and offset is going to look something like this. I already have the server.js, and let me close this. And it's pretty simple. We simply order by something, and then we need to give it a limit and an offset, right? Very simple. Now, with the cursor and the keyset way, we're doing something interesting. So we're doing a select from post where created at an ID. Of course, you can just use created at, but it can lead to collision. So you better use a second one ID to mediate that. In this case, we're using IDs. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking some kind of a keyset or a cursor, right? Let's say our cursor is laying here. So on level 4, our cursor is here. And every time we want to go to a next page, we're going to say that we're going to select the posts that are higher than this date or this ID. Well, in this case, it was 4 actually. So higher than this 4. And this is how we know where we are. And of course, we have to indicate the limit as well, right? And if you look at the code, this is how it's going to look like. So our second endpoint called keyset. And what it's going to do is, as you already saw, where created at is higher than the numbers that we give here and our limit. As simple as that. Of course, if you don't have any cursor here, then we simply take the very first limit and we don't have to do a where clause. Now, as simple as that. Now, the question is, how do you exactly use, or how do you configure the front end to know where the cursor is? Well, every time you return the data from the backend, you should also return the last cursor. So let's say the first time your backend returned 4 elements, you should return the last cursor of this 4th element, which can be just a timestamp, right? As simple as this, or you can also send a last ID. And then on the front end, if you do have a cursor, then you send the cursor in the request parameters and the last ID if you like. Okay, as simple as that, right? Also, there's a different technique that many companies like Stripe and GitHub also use, that instead of a cursor or the last ID, they simply base64 encode this, and this makes it more flexible, meaning you don't have to adjust your backend so that it really relies on the specific timestamp or ID. You can encode whatever you want, and then your backend is more flexible when it comes to decoding this and deciding what to do, right? I hope you guys learned something new. If you did, this was a quick video. As always, smash like and subscribe, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. Goodbye.